Welcome back to the Born Handy channel, where we take on pretty much anything a handyman might be asked to take on, plus a little extra. Today's video is definitely right up the alley of your average handyman, but if you find yourself a homeowner and you were thinking maybe of tackling this yourself, every house is going to be a little bit different, but as a general rule, the things I'm going to show you in this video should be able to get you through it. Now, if you're lucky enough to be under a ceiling that has exposed beams, this is almost an unnecessary video. You're just going to pick a beam and screw it up there. But I think for most people, their porches are situated in such a way that the beams are part of the trusses and that they are covered up with vinyl siding on the bottom. And so, that being the case, you have a ceiling above you made out of vinyl that prevents you from finding where the trusses are even at. So the first thing you're going to need is one of these. Now, this tool right here just has a little grasping hook on it to allow you to reach in over the overlapping sections of vinyl. You can see here how they overlap, and grab one piece and pop it out. I find that it's easier to start near one of the ends and pop this out, and once you get one little piece of it popped out, the rest of it will slide apart kind of like a zipper. Now, that's one edge of the vinyl. The other edge is usually secured to some kind of structure on the ceiling, but you'll notice it's secured very loosely here. Basically, that vinyl has to expand and contract with weather conditions, and if you go ahead and nail this or screw this all the way up very tightly, you'll end up with vinyl that's wavy and warped. So when you go to put this back, you need to remember that and don't attach this extremely tightly. Now, at its most basic, all we're doing is we're going to take our truss. This would be the bottom of the truss or the beam or whatever would be up there. We want to drill a hole through, and once the hole is through, we want to take our eye bolt and slide it through the hole and then put a nut on the end. Now, you may be noticing that this eye bolt doesn't pass all the way through this 2x4. Now, this is what was supplied with the swing. And I don't know why swing manufacturers do this. They almost always supply something that's not long enough to actually do the job. So my suggestion is, when you buy the swing, go ahead and also buy the swing mounting kit that's probably not even manufactured by the same company. Or you could also go and just try to find yourself some longer eye bolts. But to me, it's about the same price as just buying it all together in one kit. So I think that's the way to go. Luckily for me, there was a truss within about an inch of where I wanted the swing to go. So we just went with where that truss was located. But what if you're not that lucky? What if you peel it back and there is not a truss anywhere near where you wanted to go? Well, we're not dead in the water. There's a couple of solutions for that as well. So solution number one, which is the solution that I typically go with, it kind of depends on the structure of the house. So if you'll look at the way this porch is laid out, on one side we've got the wall of the house, the exterior wall. And on the other end of the porch, we've got the actual edge of the porch itself. And you can see we have what amounts to a header supported by several beams here. Now, the top of that header and the top of the wall are going to be the same height because the trusses have to span across both. So it's easy enough for me to take a new 2x4 and cut it just so that it will fit and rest on top of the wall supported by the post, as well as on top of the wall that is the exterior wall of the house. Then we can secure that new 2x4 to a nearby truss. Now, there's a couple of ways to do that. Way number one is, in my case, it was only off by about 1.5 inches. So I took a new 2x and attached it to the existing truss. Then the new span that I was going to attach my swing to connected to that new 2x spacer. So that gave me the distance that I wanted. But if you were going much further, you could easily turn your spacers like this and tie them to the existing trusses with some joist hangers, or probably even just put a few screws in it, and then put your new joist, your new span out here on the end, and make sure that it rests on top of the wall and on top of the header. And now these spacers here will prevent it from moving around, and now you got a structure to attach your swing to that is exactly where you wanted it. The other option is something that I've never been extremely comfortable with. I just feel like it's a less secure method, which basically involves putting spacers in between existing trusses. Of course, you would want to use joist hangers to do that, and then securing your swing directly to the spacers. Now that works, there's nothing wrong with it, I guess on paper, but in my mind, the idea of the boards not resting directly on top of the wall just doesn't sit well with me, so that's not a method that I prefer to use. So now that we got some structure overhead, we've got to drill some holes to put our eye bolts through. Now, your swing probably is going to have some instructions that tell you how far apart to drill the holes. In case they don't, most of the time it's going to be parallel to where the chains connect to the swing itself. But your mileage may vary there as well. So now the vinyl's out of the way. Now we've got some structure overhead, and we're ready to drill the holes to put the eye bolts so that we can mount our swing. It's not as simple as just drilling a few holes and sticking it up there. We need to know for certain that when our chains fall, our swing is going to occupy the center area of the porch. That being said, in my case, it was pretty much the center of the new beam that I added. But depending on how your porch is made, that may not be the case. So you're just going to want to make sure that you're finding the center of your porch and marking that on your structure. Once we got the center of the porch marked on the structure, then we got to find the space for the chains to be spaced out, cut that in half, and drill your hole on either side. That sounds a lot more confusing than it really is. Let's just say, for instance, that we had a 60-inch spread for our bolts to be drilled into the structure overhead. We would want to put a mark in the center and then measure 30 inches to the right and then 30 inches to the left, and that would give us a total of 60 inches directly centered up on your porch. Pretty straightforward. So now that the holes have been drilled into the structure, this next part's a little bit tricky. What we've actually got to do is put the vinyl back that is directly below the holes. Then you're going to have to drill holes in the vinyl that line up pretty much exactly with the holes that we just drilled into the structure above. Now in my case, they were close enough for me to kind of eyeball it and get it pretty good. The other thing is we got to drill these a little bigger. So you're going to want to use a little bit bigger drill bit. In my case, I used a Forstner bit, but I think a paddle bit or spade bit would work just as well. If you're having some trouble lining it up, there are a couple things you can do. Number one, you can put the vinyl back, reach over it, and drop a drill bit or something else down the hole and press. You should be able to see a little divot form in the vinyl, and then you can mark it. The other thing you could do is you could take something like a large framing square and put it against the wall and mark where your hole was. So you could say measure it out at say 18 inches and make a mark where your corner sat. So now that your vinyl comes back up, you just align the corner back where you placed your mark, and you'll know that 18 inches was the location of your hole. Okay, so at this point in the project, we've added structure if we needed to. We have drilled our holes for our eye bolts in that structure. We have also placed the vinyl below the structure, and we've drilled the holes in that vinyl to allow the eye bolts to pass through. I hope you remembered when you were doing this to reattach that vinyl somewhat loosely about how it was before so that it can expand and contract with changing weather conditions. Now we need to get the eye bolts placed into the structure permanently. This can be a little complicated too. There may be things in the way, maybe a little tight to work with. You might not even be able to see what you're doing, but through the hole that's still in your ceiling where you haven't put all the vinyl back in, you're going to reach in with a wrench or perhaps a ratchet and tighten up the lock washers that came with your eye bolts. Kind of secure it so that the eye bolt is not pressing up against the vinyl. If it's pressing up against the vinyl, you'll have little divots in your ceiling as well. Plus it'll make your swing a little on the louder side as it squeaks as it slides around on that vinyl. So be sure that your eye bolt is not putting unnecessary pressure on the vinyl above as you tighten that down. These lock nuts that'll come with a swing mounting kit, they have a nylon ring at the top, and as it tightens down, it'll never let that bolt unscrew from the nut, and you'll have a permanent solution. Now with the eye bolts on, you're ready to put the last pieces of vinyl up. The last piece of vinyl is not going to go back on as easily as it came off, so be ready for that. At this point in the project, you're pretty much finished. All you got to do is connect the chain from your swing to the hooks and enjoy. I do want to give you a word of warning if you're watching this thinking about taking this on for yourself. It may sound like everything I said in the video was fairly simple and fairly straightforward. I'm still going to give a job like this a moderate difficulty rating. The reason I come up with that rating is this is almost always something people do in the summertime. It is almost always something they do on a house that's been there for a few years. The vinyl that is the ceiling of your porch, usually does not have insulation on it, but there's almost always a little bit that's blown over. There's almost always a bunch of dead bugs, just debris, just things that have settled there over the years. And as you're pulling this stuff down, you're hot. You're probably sweating. You're probably standing on a ladder. This stuff is falling on your face. It's sticking to you. You're hot. It's very easy to become frustrated and to feel overwhelmed. I've done enough of these to say that I would call myself a pro at doing this kind of thing. And I would still go ahead and budget for about 3 hours, and 3 miserable hours. There's just something about working overhead in the heat. Oh, that's the other thing. So when your vinyl comes down, that's essentially an attic. It's going to be hotter up there than even down below. So your face is going to be getting this heat that just pours out. Your arms are up there working. I'm just here to tell you it's not as easy as it sounds. But I'm also here to tell you that it's not something that's so difficult that you can't do it. If you had the option, I would try to do it in a wintertime. A nice cool morning would be a good time to do a job like this. But that's just my opinion. So, until next time, I've got a lot of other videos in the pipeline. It's just a matter of finding the time to get them done. This has been Jason with Born Handy, and I hope to see you on the next video. You're going to want your swing resting directly. There's an airplane, a jet. You just got to wait on this big old cargo plane here.